And we're live. Hello there, everyone, to this new wonderful night or day, depending on which part of the world you're currently from. At least where I'm from, it's a nice and comfy afternoon, and hopefully we're gonna have a nice and comfy stream. No more stressful stuff, no more book reviews, no more worrying about scripts or anything of the sort. You can join me as I sit here and make fun of bread tubers. Yes, that is today's subject. That is breadtube, and they're, I guess, specifically anti-capitalist anarcho-capitalist or anything else, anti everything else that is not very left wing. Oh, hello, chat. Oh, hello, SMG. Yeah, nice to see you here as well. I do have some content prepared, but this is going to be a very nice and relaxed session so we can do whatever we want. Because, I definitely I'm not doing any more book reviews. Because I tried it once and did not go very well. So I'm experimenting. I'm trying whatever hits my ride, whatever is the most fun and is most enjoyable for everybody involved, which at the very least it was not fun for me. Lots of things are not happening well in the world right now, especially with all the passports for the flu disease, which I talked about before. Canada, where I live at, is at the forefront of this cancer, of this very, very bad thing. It's actually coming online in British Columbia in, I think, 3 days. Yeah, September 13th. So I will report how it actually functions and what you guys can do to defend yourself. That is what I plan to do when it happens. But at least for now, we can talk about different subjects, such as this guy right here. Let me screen share for you guys. Here we go. So this is a breadtuber. Breadtubers, I'm not sure where the name came from, but they're a bunch of left-wing YouTubers who make fun of the right wing and really have all kinds of things you would expect from that kind of crowd. But this video caught my notice because it's called Anarcho-Capitalism in Practice. So a breadtuber is making an anarcho-capitalist takedown video, and I thought, okay, I gotta see this. I gotta see if it has any foundational arguments or anything I can say against that. I think it'll be an entertaining experience. He has a bunch of videos here. If you look at his channel, so anarcho-capitalism in practice, Dubai is a parody, fatal flaw of free market capitalism, Ben Shapiro sucks, how we shouldn't build skyscrapers, will Putin invade Ukraine? Oh, and of course, here's a classic one. Let's see if I can find it right here. It's how I escaped the alt-right. Now that's a classic. It's kind of funny how so many breadtubers are like that. They used to be all right-wing, hardcore neo-Nazis and everywhere else until they escaped, the dreadilk. That is the alt-right. So it's one of these kind of people. Wait, I read a book? Yes, indeed I did. I actually spent 2 weeks reading that book, writing notes, writing a detailed review and a script and everything else. But it doesn't work very well. The thing is, I can't really focus on talking, like entertaining as a streamer, and reading the review at the same time. It's too complicated, honestly, and especially the subject matter, which is economics. Economics does not lend itself very well to YouTube videos. It's too complicated. It just doesn't work very well. Yeah, like Hassan, he's 3 million views. The thing is, this guy is actually pretty new. So Adam Something started his YouTube channel about less than a year ago, 7 months ago, and he already has over almost 500,000 subs. So this guy is pushed something crazy. YouTube loves this guy. And all his videos massive hits. Even his very first one got 300K, and his second video got over 1 million views. So this is something YouTube endorses, and lots of people apparently find very appealing. People love this guy. So I'm sure we'll find very lovely content, which will be highly educational for everybody involved. Hello everyone, hello everyone, and it's a very, very nice day. Now, let's start this video called Anarcho-Capitalism in Practice, and along the way I'll try stopping it, maybe giving some comments, and you guys can share your comments as well. Whether this scenario that he gives us about why anarcho-capitalism cannot work, why he's correct and why he's wrong, or why anything in between. So let's start right here.
My recent video, The Fatal Flaw of Free Market Capitalism, has generated a healthy amount of discussion, in some circles anyway, and so this led me to performing a bunch of thought experiments, which were super fun, and so this video is the result. And just as a quick refresher,
Now, this is something I actually have to give him props for, is that this guy actually thinks. Because most breadtubers or most political commentators on YouTube really don't have any kind of original thought into them, and they just regurgitate something else somebody else said. Even people like Ben Shapiro do not have a single original bone in their body. So I will give Adam some props, because he actually thinks for himself, even though it's not necessarily that highest quality. At the very least, he tried, and trying is the most important part of the battle. $3 million. Oh, that's right, yeah. Hassan did recently buy a $3 million mansion, so he's quite a rich guy. Apparently, he's even richer than Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders, like all his 3 houses combined, are worth less than Hassan's one single $3 million mansion. But doesn't he also have millions of views? Because Hassan is quite popular. Like, they love the guy. So here are the tenets, I guess, of anarcho-capitalism according to Adam Something. That is, first, there is no central state. There is self-organization. there's a free market, and public services are privatized. Now, that's kind of redundant because if there is a truly free market, then there's no such thing as a public service because there's only private services. And yeah, and again, no central state. Well, no, any kind of state. It doesn't have to be centralized. So I'm not sure if it's mostly right. That is correct. As in, I would say that there is no state in general. There is any kind of organization you want. It doesn't have to be self-organization. That's not really correct. There is a free market, though. That is an essential part. Because anarcho-capitalism has two parts. The first one is the anarchy. That is no state of any kind. Number two is there's capitalism. There are free markets. And needless to say, the other two tenets here, self-organization, public services. Well, again, there will be no public services, and any kind of organization is allowed as long as it's not made by the state. All right, let's continue.
Anarcho-capitalism is a stateless society where individuals are free to contract with each other and everything else is up to the free market. All the public services are privatized. And I was rather curious as to how this would work in real life. Now, one thing that NCAPs like to bring up to help support the viability of their ideology is the so-called Icelandic Commonwealth, which...
Yeah, and he's going to talk about it a bit right now, but at least hypothetically or theoretically, there was Iceland in the Middle Ages was an anarcho-capitalist state. I looked into it, but unfortunately, there is really not much information about it, and that's why it's not very useful. Especially if you look at documentation that we have from the Middle Ages, you're not going to find economic policies, the tax rates, and everything like that. So if you want to gather evidence for which economic systems can work and which can't, I personally would not use Iceland. Especially because anybody who writes about it is going to have a certain bias, like he's going to say right now. So when it comes to looking at history to find economic data and learn economic lessons from it, I personally would not use like single state examples. The best you can do is look at overall trends. One thing I like to take into account, one thing to compare is, let's say, England against Germany or France. Because we don't know the exact tax rate they had each time, but we do know the general trend, and that is that England had a limited government. Because there was the Magna Carta and various other pieces of legislation around that time, which limited the power of the king in relation to the people. And what it meant is that England was overall far more friendly towards business and had more free market principles than a nation like France, which had absolute monarchy and much more entrenched guilds. And of course, you could look at things. I think the enclosure system, which was, I guess, a redistribution, reprivatization of the lands, which had a major economic impact and all that kind of stuff. But it's still going to be very biased. You can't look and see, okay, people at the time were poor or people at the time were rich, because that kind of data does not exist. Any kind of history is going to be biased, and you're going to have to take that into account. So this example is probably not a very good one.
Which was, for all intents and purposes, a proto-NCAP society in the Middle Ages. Now, it did manage to exist from 930 until 1262/63, when the Icelanders apparently voted to ask the King of Norway to take over their country. And
now, this is something really odd here, because if they truly were anarcho-capitalists, there's no way they would ever vote for something. Yeah, because voting is a violation of consent. Just because you voted for something does not mean you get to violate somebody else's rights. So this right here is a big red flag and a warning sign. Because if those guys really did believe in free market principles and self-determination, and the states were evil, they would never have done this. So this tells me this was not really anything we would consider anarcho-capitalist today.
To quote from the Icelandic Commonwealth's Wikipedia page from the Decline and Fall section, in the early 13th century, the age of the Sturlungs, the Commonwealth began to suffer from chaos and division resulting from internal disputes. Originally, the Goddard chieftains functioned more as a contractual relationship than a fixed geographic chieftaincy. However, by 1220, this form of communal leadership was replaced by dominant regional individuals who battled with one another for more control.
And this right here, this does not sound like anarchy to me at all, because this sounds like tribalism or rule by warlords. I guess it's a bit of a misconception. People think, oh, anarchy means, that there is no good governments and there are only warlords who do the same things governments do, but they fight with one each other. So, for example, in China during the Warring States period, that has to be anarchy, because there's no one central government. And no, because like it says right here, if there are warlords who take taxes from the citizens, then that means they are like small states. There are small states competing with each other. So, yeah, this is not anarchy, not what, at least by the modern definition, it would not fit.
One historian argues that the chaos and violence of this period stem from an imbalance of power and changes in the nature of Icelandic warfare. Whereas the number of Goddard had been at least 39 in the early Icelandic Commonwealth, a few powerful families had consolidated control over most of the Goddard in the late 12th century. Now, I don't know about you, but this to me sounds awfully familiar. And my favorite part about this is that the...
Okay, what he said just here, it sounds awfully familiar.
But this to me sounds awfully familiar.
Now, I guess he's talking about consolidation, but it really does not fit, because I'm assuming he means like corporate consolidation, which really mostly came thanks to globalization. Because as companies become bigger, they get bigger economies of scale, and especially better negotiating power with other countries, across many different peoples. These kind of companies, these huge ones, really would not exist, especially in a free market, if they didn't have access to giant global markets, which came available thanks to technology and the advancement of it. So it's a bit different than what he's implying here. It's not inevitable. It depends on the current system they're taking part of.
And my favorite part about this is that the Icelandic Commonwealth failed so hard in the end that people ended up inviting a foreign despot to invade their land because even that was preferable to living in Icelandic Anarcho-Capitalism.
A fun bit of trivia: something similar actually happened in Russia, and that is the first dynasty of the Russian people, the Rurikhovich dynasty, was invited over by the local Slavs, and the Ruriks, they were actually Scandinavians, they were Vikings. So a bunch of Slavs really was so incompetent, and they didn't want to elect any of their local leaders as rulers, and that to invite some Scandinavian family to do them for them instead. So apparently this kind of stuff wasn't that unheard of. It was happening during this time in the Middle Ages.
Now, this was in part a result of the King of Norway exerting...
Oh, there's a comment saying Anarcho-Capitalism sucks. Are you talking about me, or talking about this Anarcho-Capitalism? Because I'm guessing this one does suck, but it doesn't seem to be a very good one. I agree with that.
Pressure on Iceland for a longer time, so some might say that this is cheating and thus isn't fair criticism. But this line of thinking leaves us with three possible options as to why Anarcho-Capitalism fell. Number one would be because of the Nordic invasion, number two because people were manipulated into voting for the takeover, and number three because people misjudged the situation and made their own call at the ballot box. And I have bad news for ANCAPs. All these options prove my point. They show you that an...
I want to add some caveat to this about the conditions for successful anarcho-capitalist society to function. And that is, you can't just remove a state and expect things to go well, because there are two parts of it, anarcho and capitalism. Thing is, in order for society to function, the people have to believe in certain ideologies, that follow certain beliefs, and that's regardless of what state they're in. Because there are different states, even with the same constitution and the same systems, and the outcomes are very different, and that is because of the people that execute them. That is the reason why some countries have more or less corruption. So in this case, in the Middle Ages, this concept of free markets did not exist. Nobody respected, the right to free property and uninterrupted trade between people. So these people, even if they were anarchists, they would never have been anarcho-capitalists because they did not believe in capitalism. And the belief in hardcore capitalism and property rights and the non-aggression principle is necessary for a successful anarcho-capitalist society.
ANCAP society would either fall victim to a state's well-organized invasion force, or get subverted by propaganda, or people will vote on a feels over reals basis and end up screwing themselves over. Brexit. And I personally think that if a country would transition...
Oh man, Brexit, it shows just how unbiased he is. Bringing like a modern day politics into this, but okay.
Into the ANCAP model somewhere, a military intervention scenario would be its most likely end. And it would be super convenient too. I mean, there would be no state to declare war on. There is no state. You're just rolling with the tanks and...
There is no state, but there are people. And groups of people can do whatever they want to defend themselves. You can have organizational structures and defensive agreements. And the problem with this argument that a state can always invent, a non-state entity is because it applies to state entities as well. This is an example I brought up before, but using anti and anarcho-capitalist arguments, it means Canada could not exist. Because hypothetically, right now, the USA could invade Canada and remove its independence. Yet it doesn't happen, because politics and negotiations can still exist even without it. In order to debunk anarcho-capitalism, you have to use arguments that only apply to anarcho-capitalism and no other system. Because there is no reason, if you apply this argument against everything else, then logically separate states could not exist. Right now, we should be in a one world government because the USA should be able to use military might to conquer everything else. And yet it does not happen. Multiple states exist, multiple ideas exist, and therefore multiple societies can exist at the same time. One big guy is not going to swallow up everybody else because that's simply not how the world works.
And announce martial law. Even if some people would resist, it would just be a handful of loosely coordinated militias, if that, against a regular army. And of course, if you have some kind of very powerful high-tech military hardware, you need a very complicated logistics chain to maintain it. Billy Joe can't just tow a Reaper drone to his shack to recalibrate.
Man, logistics chains, that's so hard, but free market cannot do logistics. Amazon, everybody else, they know nothing about logistics. They're so inefficient. If you want to get true efficiency, you should look at the U.S. Postal Service. Now you get good bang for the buck. They have the best chains, right?
It is targeting AI or something. What an average ANCAP commune could do at most is maintain or create small arms and crude explosives, maybe.
Again, this is an interesting equalization he does here. I think what he's saying is that anarcho-capitalism means people cannot band together. You cannot have organizations. You cannot have corporations. You cannot have big groups of people working towards a common cause. Like each person is his own businessman, and you cannot have companies, which is a very, very weird idea. I guess because, like he said earlier on, he believes that anarcho-capitalism means, you're all for yourself, you're selfish, never cooperate with other people, which is very, very weird.
So the unkept dream stumbles right at the starting line. And right here, right now, I could just stop bothering with all this, but I'd like to dig a little bit deeper.
That said, you can stop bothering with this 3 minutes of this analysis, which really doesn't say anything. Wow, a very high standards we have here.
Let's give it all to ANCAPs, the most ideal scenario imaginable for the emergence of real-life anarcho-capitalism. An imaginary world where every country transitioned into anarcho-capitalism at the exact same time, all corporations were completely dissolved, all nuclear weapons were disarmed, and all complex military hardware beyond.
This is a comment about Amazon and logistics. And no, Amazon has amazing logistics. They're pioneers in the field of deliveries and getting things to where they need to be on time. It's amazing. Lots of the aircraft industries, the airplanes, ships, and everywhere else. This innovation in logistics and getting things on time, the transportation of goods and services. Private companies are amazingly efficient at it. And what the government does is really leech off them or take the technologies and adapt them. Because the government's not the one innovating in this field. Like whenever the government does try to do logistics, it ends up horrible. So no, this is something that the free market proves is done very, very efficiently, under its own umbrella.
On small arms was disposed of. All you have is people living freely with their guns, ready to enter into voluntary contracts with each other, having inherited all the infrastructure built out by the now dissolved governments, and everyone getting a fresh start at capitalism. So I believe that this would be a perfect, or at least near perfect condition for anarcho-capitalism.
First of all, these conditions are not necessary. Let's say simultaneous global transitions, because like I said, multiple states can exist in the world, and therefore a society, even one that is pacifist, could also exist if they have the right negotiations. Second, existing corporations dissolved. You don't have to do that. It's fine to keep the modern corporations as long as they follow the same rules as everybody else. So, for example, you can't give corporations legal immunities from prosecutions or follow different rules. They would have to be treated just like people and also be able to prosecute it for it. You can't get legal immunity like right now, where you get all kinds of special rights, special, exemptions. Third one, nuclear weapons. You could argue that it would be even better that way, but the thing is, the problem with nukes is that they're very emotional. Like on the core of it, they're not really any different than any other kind of high-grade weapon. High-grade explosives, biological weapons and all that can be just or even more deadly depending on how you use it. But because nukes have this kind of very toxic idea, they're too overwhelming. Every person has their own perception of how nukes are. They think they're different. They're nothing. You can't handle them. You need special rules. You have to break everything. It's a disaster. You simply cannot treat nuclear weapons like you do other kinds of weapons. I do disagree with that, but it's at least good he puts that away because it makes people not act rationally, not think rationally. All advanced military hardware, again, anybody can use advanced military hardware. In the past, individuals could own cannons, they could own ships. So there's no reason to remove this. I think what he's going for is that, in anarchism, every person will literally be by himself and could not organize with others. So therefore, this kind of, complex, I guess, jets, drones, or any kind of machinery, any kinds of electronics, I guess they wouldn't exist, because that requires companies. And apparently, yeah, a free market cannot make companies, it cannot make tanks or jets. That's weird. And free people living off the land, I guess so every person is a landowner to make it more equal. And all infrastructure is inherited from the government era, because as we all know, only governments can make infrastructure. But, well, obviously, it has to be either inherited or made from scratch. But free people can make infrastructure all the time. It happens. Like every parking lot, every area that is owned by a company have infrastructure in it and is taken care of. And capitalism has been reset. You don't even need to reset, but okay. But it's fine, honestly. This is a good argument. It gives a nice blank canvas for us to examine different ideas, and especially the hypothetical scenario that he wants to show us right here.
Capitalism. So how will things work out? Let's take a look. So our little simulation will have two relevant parameters. Number one is that everybody will act according to their rational self-interest without exception, and number two,
okay, this is already really weird because it says, number one, rational self-interest followed it through at all times. That is not a requirement at all. I'm guessing he's following... I haven't read Ayn Rand's books. I'm not sure if that's something she says. But what is rational self-interest is up to the individual. Whatever you believe will give you the most good, whatever you believe will give you the most value, that is what you should do. The only limitation, of course, comes with the non-aggression principle. That is, you are free to pursue your own happiness and acquire your own means as long as you don't intrude upon the rights of others. Basically, you cannot take somebody else's property. what is rational is subjective. So the requirement for every people to be rational is unnecessary, and both number one unnecessary, and number two it's impossible. Okay, so Chad thinks he's claiming there can't be a big enough military because it can't be funded. Again, no, it doesn't make any sense because companies buy from each other. People buy products from big companies. Refrigerators, refrigerators, one person can't make a refrigerator. You need a giant logistics network to make it. And refrigerators are made for the free market. If there's a demand for something like airplanes or something like tanks, then they will be made. This idea that companies cannot exist under anarcho-capitalism is quite absurd. Okay, so he says first condition was rational self-interest at all times, which again is nonsense. And number two is there is no deus ex machina. Everything is a logical consequence of previous events. Okay, that's good. Yeah, this should not be. Everything should be logical and should follow basic principles. I think that is a good thing to follow.
There will be no deus ex machina type situations, meaning everything will develop organically as a logical continuation of the events that happened before. So over here we have a network of smaller settlements, each operating their own basic infrastructure just like during medieval times. In these settlements, eventually some people start getting more successful at capitalism than others. Let's call them great men. And we'll be focusing on one of them, this fellow called Billy Bob, living in the town of Ainvale. Now Ainvale does have its own little water system, but the water quality is not the greatest. It's drinkable, but it tastes kind of funny, and if you have any sort of stomach problems, it just tends to make the problem worse. Now Billy Bob runs a saloon in town, and he thinks the water quality is hindering his sales because it makes his liquor taste worse. And to help run his business smoother, using his knowledge of distillers, he puts together a water purifier so he can disconnect from the local water system and save money, and also have better tasting liquor. Now his water purifier ends up being a success, able to produce large quantities of water with a low energy cost, which is somewhat even better quality than the water from the system. Now he produces more water than he needs by a considerable margin, so he starts selling it off to people. With those profits, plus his increased revenue from liquor sales, he puts together a second machine in his free time. This time he works out some of the bugs, and the new machine turns out to be slightly more efficient and produces even better quality water. He now sells a lot of water and makes large amounts of money. Now Billy Bob is forward thinking and keeps reinvesting his...
I'm just going to summarize where he's getting at right here. He's saying this that Billy Bob here is a business side tycoon. That is, he's very good at business management, he has good ideas and can act upon them, therefore he gains lots of wealth and provides services to the people. So this is where he's going. And this idea of what happens when a person acquires wealth and becomes an entrepreneur, one of the higher class.
His revenue back into his business. With his profits, he buys a plot of land behind the saloon and builds a huge water storage tank. He also builds out pipes to the farmlands nearby and starts selling his water to the farmers. With his increasing profits, he hires workers to build and maintain water purifiers. Soon enough, he has enough capital to offer a handsome amount for the local water system. The owners like his offer and sell him all their infrastructure. After all, they weren't making as much money on it anyway, they didn't really know what they were doing, the water quality was bad, they had a large maintenance backlog, and most people in Ainvale just went on collecting rainwater and boiling it anyway. So they are more than happy to just pull the golden parachute and get rid of all their problems and go on to do something else. Following the acquisition, Billy Bob founds the Bill and Robert Water Company. Now everyone in town is his current or potential customer. Billy Bob has his workers connect his purifiers to the system, filling the pipes with his water. He also spends on maintenance, replacing rusty pipes and leaky valves, which increases the water quality and reduces water loss. His customer base starts to grow rapidly. People happily sign the contract stating that they'll get the water cheaper than under the previous owners and at a guaranteed higher quality. They can also disconnect from Billy Bob's pipes for the equivalent of $1,000 as a service fee, but why would they? The water is cheap and great.
First of all, this whole disconnection fee, I think what he's saying here is trying to add regulations or rules in order to prevent that from happening. Thing is, there's no way you can enforce that. Because if, let's say, he builds those water pipes upon somebody else's property, then they then become the owner, the property's owner. So they can always just disconnect the pipes by taking off themselves. They don't have to hire him in order to do so. The reason why this works in real life is that, like, say, you can have these kind of elaborate contracts. And let's say, okay, you have to pay me $1 million if you break this rule. You can't enforce that if it's not fair. The reason why that happens is because of the court system and the laws that are biased towards corporations. So, first of all, yeah, so he might try to enforce these rules, but if they're not popular, then he won't be able to.
As time goes on, other people try to get in on the water business too, offering their own water from their own purifiers. Only a few people switch over though, since Billy Bob's water is reasonably priced and of high quality, and there is a $1,000 disconnect fee which nobody wants to pay. But then a true prodigy...
Again, the $1,000 disconnect fee. If there is a competitor who is offering a better value, then there's no way they can enforce this $1,000 disconnect fee. Already, this person is acting more like a government because there's no way he can enforce that. There's no reason to respect this company if they're not offering good service. But he is right in a sense that as long as this company is providing a better service than everybody else, let's say if they're the only market in town and nobody else has brought up any competition, then yeah, people will keep using it because they offer the best value. So far, it's an example of an efficiency monopoly.
Appears an even greater man who creates a water purifier that's even better than Billy Bob's. Worse, he starts selling the water from it, and some people actually switch over and they are very satisfied with the water. It's even cheaper and even better quality. And this even greater man even starts making some money on his business, sucking away profits from Billy Bob. Now Billy Bob gets word of this, so he visits this prodigy personally and offers to buy out his business, but he gets rejected. Now the actions of this prodigy directly threaten Billy Bob's business. He must neutralize this threat as soon as he can. Billy Bob goes on to use his considerable wealth and leverage to artificially lower the price of water even below the competitor's price. Although he goes into the red somewhat, he has enough money stockpiled to survive.
This is actually not a good new argument. This is going back to the Standard Oil days. Because at the time, business competitors to Standard Oil, basically the biggest oil company in the United States, told them to use predatory pricing. So what it says is the predatory pricing argument. The idea is that you can drive people out of business by temporarily lowering prices and then waiting until they go bust until to raise them back again. That's what he's going for right now.
Prodigy less so by virtue of being a small business. He also has to lower his price to compete, otherwise nobody would buy water from him. His customers start to dwindle, many switching back over to Billy Bob, who announces a $500 water coupon bonus to be given to all returning customers. After months of losses, the prodigy is at the end of his rope.
One thing you have to assume in order for this to work is that Billy Bob has infinite money, and this new startup has zero money and no investors. So there's no way he can convince everybody else to give him funds to support this endeavor and take market share away from Billy Bob. So assuming no investor class exists.
Spent every bit of money on keeping his business alive. He sold absolutely everything he could, now living on the barest of necessities in an empty apartment, perhaps 1 month away from eviction. At this point, Billy Bob visits him again and makes a new offer. A very pretty sum of cash.
Actually, I think that's a very good point right here, because this assumed that investment as a vehicle does not exist in this universe, that you cannot get other people to convince you to give them money in a proposition that you'll make more money later. Everybody literally only has their own labor, their own goods, their own property, and that's it, their own funds. And there's no way they can get any other sorts of funding, which is quite restrictive.
For his business and a lucrative upper management position within the Bill and Robert Water Company, together with a luxury executive penthouse. He will also have access to a very generous innovation fund which he can use to invent even better water purifiers. And this time he doesn't have to worry about not being able to pay the bills if his inventions prove unsuccessful. Billy Bob takes all the financial risks and the prodigy is free to unleash his creative genius. What's better, for every innovation he gets a huge bonus, with the added caveat that all of them will be the property of the Bill and Robert Water Company and cannot be made open source. The prodigy has to make a choice. He can refuse, go broke, get evicted in a month, and sleep on...
Okay, again, this is it's a big straw man. Because it assumes there's only two entrepreneurs in this whole universe. Basically, there's only Billy Bob, who owns pretty much the only business in town, and there's just this guy on his own. And let's say in the real world, because there are multiple companies in different fields. So let's say there's Amazon. Let's say there's this delivery company which is doing very well, but then they notice this entrepreneur trying to start up a business against this water tycoon. And they think, hey, we're a very successful delivery company. We have lots of money. We'll fund you just so you can take away market share from the water company. Maybe we can get into that field. It's going to be amazing. Or just any random guy. Let's say there's one guy who inherited $1 million from his ancestors for free. And he sees this kind of businessman thinking, you know what, dude, you have potential. I think if we develop your technology, we can take down this water giant. And then all he has to do is invest that money and just stay out there until they can no longer afford paying subpar prices. Is Dio kill or is this not the stream? Dio, we have no idea where he is. If we find him, you can message him, but he has disappeared off the face of the planet. Leo tried finding him, and we do not know where he is. So that is very unfortunate. But if you do find him, tell him that we miss him, and he is welcome to come back, though.
Under the bridge, wrapped in a filthy blanket, hungry and sick, torturing himself with the thought of the dream he lost. Or he can continue his life's work of inventing purifiers and fulfill his dreams in a position of prestige and wealth, high salary, luxury penthouse, generous bonuses, freedom to innovate, and all he needs to do for this is sign the dotted line. And he does. He becomes general manager of the Bill and Robert Water Company, gets a beautiful penthouse where just a bathroom is twice as big as his entire
There's a comment here, what if this guy burns $10 million to fuck the market, haha. But the thing is, that is what predatory pricing is about. But unlike what's happening here, the very big problem is that there are more than two people in the universe. In this example, there are only two. There is the one rich business tycoon, and there's the up-and-coming starter that has no money at all. but there are always more people. And the thing is, the market has more money than you do. There's this old saying in investment that is, the market can remain irrational for longer than you can remain insolvent. In real life, whenever companies try to do what he's proposing here, that is, sell the products below par and try to drive the competitors out of business, it doesn't work, because as soon as they raise prices, the competitors pop back up, because it's very relatively cheap to set up competition again, especially when they're subsidizing the product. Because people are smart. Entrepreneurs are very clever. So let's say let's say the water is worth $10, but this guy sells it for $9. So what they do is that other competitors buy up his product at $9 and then sell it back to 10 at different towns. So eventually, if he tries to subsidize and sell below par for long enough, he'll be driven out of business. Thing is, this will only work if he has infinite amounts of money. And nobody in real life has infinite money. There's always a limit somewhere.
Previous apartment. As promised, he gets to tinker with his designs on the side and gets huge bonuses for his work. He becomes a respected member of the community and everyone admires him for his talents. And Billy Bob now controls the town's entire water market. He stops the price dumping and returns to making massive profits, now even more since the prodigy helps increase the efficiency. With his innovations, that is. But aside from doing his...
Just a note, is that in a free market society, there would be no patent system, there would be no intellectual property laws. So there's nothing stopping somebody else from using that very same technique that the new innovator invented. There's nothing stopping them from copying it, literally. So him owning the inventor will not mean anything, because the inventor can always be convinced by somebody else paying them more. Again, this only works if you assume this water tycoon is literally the only businessman in existence.
His business, Billy Bob also likes to read, mainly about great men in the past and what they did to succeed. He comes across the idea of buying out as much of the production chain as possible. The chain that supplies the business, that is. So
again, there's one guy with infinite money and everybody else is poor. So it's a very interesting universe he's imagining here. But, I think that's a bit of projection, right? Because I guess in imagination, most people, that is how it would function. Under a free market society, the poor would have nothing and the rich would have everything and nobody else would ever exist. There would be no competition. So I think this is a good lens, a good perspective into how these kind of people think.
Billy Bob might be selling the water, but it's not his company that manufactures the pipes, or mines the ore to smelt the metal, or makes the parts for the purifiers. And so he goes on to acquire as many of these enterprises as possible using the same tactic, offering management positions and large salaries. By the time he's done, he can build out a water supply system from scratch just using his company resources. He now owns mines, foundries, machine building workshops.
Now what he's talking about here is horizontal expansion. That is a company that's successful in one field trying to expand it to others. The most popular example today would probably be Disney, because Disney started with the movies, then it brought into streaming rights, into theme parks and everywhere else. They're now in lots and lots of different fields. But the thing is, even Disney, they're still mostly focused on entertainment. They're not really expanded outside of that, because being proficient in even one field is extremely difficult. Like, it's competitive, it's hard, it's not an easy thing. If you ever tried to be a business owner, you'd know, dude, making money is really freaking difficult. This idea that one company can necessarily, if it's good at one thing, it means it'll also be good at something else is not true. The only thing you can do is just take a look at Star Wars. Disney. They're business geniuses. They know how to make money from movies, and they buy Star Wars and they run it into the ground. How's that possible? It's because just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at everything else. So this is a very fallacy here. So this guy will buy other businesses and make more money as long as he's good at running them, as long as he can outcompete and be more efficient than the competition. And if he can really do that, if he was a water tycoon and now suddenly owns every other business in the town and does it better than everybody else could possibly do, that means he's no longer a human. This guy is a god emperor. And once we're dealing with god emperors, these hypothetical examples start to get pretty wacky.
Shops and optimizes their production for his goals. Those enterprises might suffer losses due to this, but the water company gets materials much cheaper and the gains far outpace the losses, which Billy Bob...
Star Wars analogies. Well, it's not really an analogy. It's literally what happens with the Star Wars license. And I'm not sure even Star Wars analogies are that common. I think food analogies, and I think that's something you have to watch out for. If somebody starts talking about Pringles or something versus Lay's chips, then yeah, that's a red sign.
Of course, ends up cross-subsidizing. But Billy Bob doesn't stop there. He becomes obsessed with control. He now owns all of his production chain, but decides he wants more. But what else can he acquire? Well, the other end, of course. His biggest customers are...
I just want to say a bit, just because you own a production chain doesn't mean you'll make more money or be more efficient. Because again, it depends upon management. For example, lots of drug companies, let's say pharmacies, like here in Canada we have London Drugs, and there's different drug suppliers they can use. Like I think McKesson is one of them, but London Drugs has its own drug distribution company. The thing is, it kind of sucks. It's not very efficient. The only reason it keeps using it is because it saves them cost personally. But they're not good enough to provide good services for other pharmacies. Each pharmacy kind of has its own thing. So this idea that vertical integration will make you more efficient, it'll make it more efficient for you, but it's not really going to make you grab more market share. It's not this panacea that he thinks this is.
Farmers who use his water for irrigation. With Billy Bob's advanced irrigation systems made by his foundries and workshops, the farms grew to the point where they could not sustain themselves with their own wells anymore, and so they became dependent on Billy Bob's water. But hey, it's a great deal, so they're not complaining. Billy Bob founds the Bill and Robert Agricultural Company and starts buying out all the land plots around Ainville. His tactics are the same: offer the owners generous terms and occasionally a high position and lucrative salary, if Billy Bob deems the owner to be a potential valuable addition to his team, that is. And so most landowners end up taking his offer. And those who initially
Just a note that buying out entire businesses, or in this case buying out entire tracts of lands, is actually quite difficult to do. Because in practice, if somebody notices that you want to buy out, let's say, an entire industry, then what they're going to do is they're going to raise prices. Because if these people notice, like, hey, wait a second, Billy Bob is trying to buy out the entire town. I wonder if I can charge him like a huge markup and make up like $1 million. Because that's what happens in real life, you know? As you buy more and more, you know, that means there's increased demand, so the price would go up. So if Billy Bob really did try to buy out the entire town, it's going to cost him a fortune. The only way it's going to work is if this guy's literally infinite dollars. Again, if he's the god emperor of mankind, then owns everything.
don't, are either swayed by secret deals where Billy Bob offers them a price well above market.
And here's another comment. What about diseconomies of scale? And that is true, especially if there is a very good management at the beginning. As the company expands, it's not going to stay the same. It's going to introduce inefficiencies. So the economics of scale, which when people argue that, oh, eventually only large companies will dominate everything, well, there are also diseconomies of scale. Because when it comes to management and lots of other aspects, small companies are much more efficient than larger ones. And that is the reason why larger ones are afraid. You know, that's the reason why Amazon, Walmart, and really all the little stores and restaurants right now, why they use the government, you know, to shut down small businesses. Because small businesses are a threat because they have higher efficiency. Their management knows what they're doing, unlike the gigantic bureaucracies of big companies, which are incredibly wasteful. I'm going to go back a bit. So yeah, okay, let's see here.
And those who initially don't are either swayed by secret deals where Billy Bob offers them a price well above market, or
secret deals. There's no reason for the deal to be secret. You know, the markets. We're assuming markets are an intrinsic part of the society, dude. You can just put it on the open. You don't need secret deals.
by threatening with accidents, quote unquote, happening to the pipes that feed those particular plots.
Okay, accidents. So thing is, if you start doing that, that means you're going to start losing goodwill. There's one important aspect we have to talk about here, which is being left out of the question. That is, a company can only acquire this much business, or or the goodwill of the citizens, if it has a good reputation. Now, up until now, it's believable because he hasn't really done any bad business. He hasn't given any bad services, any bad conditions, or anywhere else, except for maybe the $1,000 disconnection fee. Which, if that's what everybody else offers as well, you could get away with that. But let's say one of these people, he said, oh man, if you don't take this deal, we're gonna break your pipes. Imagine if they actually told it, let's say, to an actual free press, or start telling their neighbors. There's gonna be a fucking shitstorm. Just look at corporations right now and how badly they react to bad publicity, bad press. Do you think he will get away with threatening to break people's pipes just because he didn't sell him land? Again, this is only gonna work if you assume he's the god emperor. Everybody loves him, and he can get away with everything. It doesn't matter. So, dude, in real life, there is a cost to these shady practices, and that is a loss of reputation. Big companies need to have a good reputation. You may shit on Amazon all you want for how it treats the workers, but they give a very good product. If you're on the consumer end, it's amazing for you. Imagine if Amazon just suddenly threatened you to cut off your Prime subscription, if you didn't let them buy your house. It'd end them. It'd be the end of the company. There's no way they could get away with that.
One way or another, Billy Bob ends up owning all the land plots around town, satisfying his growing urge for ownership and control, for the time being anyway. And because of his great public business practices, nobody opposes him. Everybody wants to see him succeed. He's a great manager, a benefactor of prodigies, and his cheap, high-quality water helps the local industry, supporting breweries, distilleries, a paper mill, and even a paint factory.
This guy is the god emperor. Yeah, again, that's what he's getting at.
Success is everyone else's success, and Ainville is booming because of him. A true great man he is, but the success begins to draw some shady characters into the area. Raider gangs from the
breaking water pipes violates the NAP. It depends. First of all, are the water pipes on somebody else's property? Because if they are, then yes, that would be breaking the NAP. But if he's breaking it somebody else, then not really. It's property rights are a bit complex. Maybe I can make a whole video just about that. But it can be depending on the condition, but not always. There's basically two different types of crimes in a capitalist society. That is a violation of the non-aggression principle and contract violation. Because you can either break promises or you can break somebody's body or take their shit. So it depends on which side of the two it happens. But those are the only two types of crimes that are possible.
abandoned areas in the south start harassing the town. The townsfolk organize
Is this Raider gangs or is this Fallout? Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. Let's see what he's getting at with this.
into a militia and manage to
Okay,
fight
wait,
MPs
militias?
at
Wait,
the local industry.
okay, let's rewind a bit. How do you get to militias? I actually want to see here. Want to see this here. That's a bit much.
Supporting breweries, distilleries, a paper mill, and even a paint factory. His success is everyone else's success, and Ainville is booming because of him. A true great man he is, but the success begins to draw some shady characters into the area. Raider gangs from the abandoned areas.
Raider gangs? What? Okay, no, you can't do that. Because Raider gangs, that's the thing. If this was a narco-capitalist society, those Raider gangs, they would be shot down on sight. There would be security companies, literally, just shooting them in the streets. Dude, there would be no Raider gangs, not in the way they think about it here. If there are Raider gangs which are taking resources from other people, that's not what I would call a narco-capitalist society. That means this example is already dishonest. This means society is already broken down and people aren't following the rules. Because there's no way Raider gangs could survive. They literally would not be able to buy food. Where are they getting the food from? Again, if a farmer ever met them, he would shoot them on sight. If a water company, if it ever tried, if they tried buying from them, they would be shot down on sight. They could not get internet. They could not get, go on roads. They could not do anything. Raider gangs, it's a fantasy. Like, this would only work if you assume this is a Mad Max world. And that's your idea of anarchy and you haven't put any thought into it. Like, where the fuck are these Raider gangs coming from? That's nonsense.
In the south start harassing the town. The townsfolk organize into a militia and manage to fend off the attackers, but just barely. Dozens die to gunshot wounds, and the townsfolk come together on the main square to honor the dead. At the ceremony, Billy Bob delivers a speech.
But first of all, again, this assumes there is no private security. I guess the modern day is just too much. You can't have private security companies, telling, oh, call this guy to defend you from town. If this was a regular issue, this should have been a business already right now. But I guess in this example he's setting up here, Billy Bob is the first person in existence to realize that the security is a service that needs to be given to the people, and it's more efficient than just doing it themselves. But just regular shootouts and like, oh man, can't believe like 5 people died this day from the raiding gangs. Man, if only, dude, what if we started a company that gives people security and defense from raiders? Like, okay, so Billy Bob was the first person to think of that. Okay, let's go on.
Speech lamenting their heroic sacrifice. He ends his speech by announcing the foundation of a permanent security force under his control to defend the town, so that nothing like this will happen ever again. Anyone can enlist. The gear and training are provided, together with free company housing, and happen ever again. Of a permanent security force under his control to defend the town, so that nothing like this will happen ever again. Anyone.
Okay, using business terms, he's saying he's founding his own private security company. Okay, so I'm gonna use like a more proper business terms just to make it clear.
Can enlist. The gear and training are provided, together with free company housing and a good salary. A few months later, Blackwater Security already has 100 members who, aside from guarding the perimeters, also patrol inside Ainville to keep up the order. That way, people no longer have to bother with organizing militias and neighborhood watches and have more time to spend freely. The next raider attack gets repelled much easier thanks to the organized, semi-professional defense force. Though casualties are minimal, the raiders manage to do significant damage to certain.
Dude, what kind of world is this? Like, is this supposed to be a positive example of narco-capitalism? But he's assuming that just these raider gangs going around killing people at random every few months. Dude, what the hell? This is already toxic from the very beginning. Dude, seriously?
Parts of the town. Billy Bob wants to pay.
Can you imagine if I made a hypothetical communist, utopian state, but then say, okay, so people get banded together and had very nice, happy communes until suddenly the capitalist raiders came by and killed like half the population. Like, dude, what? Didn't you say this was a utopia? Oh my god.
For the reconstruction out of his own pocket, announcing his intentions in front of a cheering crowd. He also suggests building a defensive structure around the town, which he would gladly help finance, but most of the money would come from people's pockets.
Okay, so again, he's kind of skipping a few steps here. First of all, whether or not he can build those defensive structures depends on who owns the land. So if he owns the land, he doesn't have to ask for their permission to do so, because he already owns it, he can do whatever he wants.
At first, not everyone is on board with the idea, but in a few months following raider sightings and a massive...
So, again, wait, how does the property work? So I'm guessing it means everybody sold their houses and now they're renting from him? That's a pretty amazing proposition there, because if you look at the housing market right now, I'm not sure they'd be happy with that. Can you imagine if somebody came into town and said, okay, I'm buying all your houses and now you're going to have to rent from me? So that's already a bit much. But I guess if he's a god emperor, people love him that much, they trust him so much, they would sell him his houses and they would become permanent renters. Then yeah, this guy must be god amongst men.
Pro-wall campaign, which appears to be grassroots but is financed completely by Billy Bob from the shadows, the public opinion shifts and the wall gets built around Ainville. The town becomes...
Again, why does he need public opinion in order to build the wall? If he owns the land, he should be able to do it. This doesn't really make much sense.
It's completely safe, which gives a boost to its economy and draws in a lot of people from all around the area who move in for that safety and stability. Soon enough, Ainville almost doubles in population thanks to its appeal, and the
Man, so an entire city of only renters. It doubles in population. Again, I don't know. I think some people want to actually own their houses. It's a bit of a far-fetched to me.
generously low rent prices offered by the Bill and Robert Real Estate Company, which, aside from apartments, also builds a massive fortification at the center of the town as Bilbab's pet project. It's an added second line of defense that people can retreat to in case the wall got breached. This added security draws in even more people, and consequently causes significant appreciation in property prices.
Oh, you're right. He's building that wall. Man, this guy, never mind. He's the bad kind of God Emperor. He's God Emperor Trump reincarnate. Holy shit.
Everyone is in favor of building the fort. Once completed, Billy Bob moves his entire headquarters inside it. At this point, Billy Bob owns the water system, the land around town, multiple mines, workshops, foundries, a huge number of buildings in town, a security force, a wall, and a fort. And all these are run by the managers under him, who also grow in power and influence with him, organizing different aspects of life, and are only accountable to Billy Bob personally. Billy Bob is a great man who has done so much for Ainville, and he would like to see some more compensation for his efforts. He announces the need for a contribution from everyone living inside the walls to finance the upkeep of all the defenses. Most people agree to it, and those who don't are offered to move outside the walls. If they refuse,
This only works if he owns literally every plot of land. Let's say, like, in real life, he cannot do that. He cannot buy out entire industries because there's always be somebody holding out. Even if one person, let's say, owned like a third of the land that he does not control, then they can start offering like a rent there, and he has no power over them because this is a free market system. So again, you have to assume that he already has an absolute monopoly and he has infinite amounts of money.
voter security will simply evict them. Now, this is of course a risky move in terms of PR, so Billy Bob proceeds to buy up as many local news outlets as he can, or at least try to fill their ranks.
Oh man, so that's it. If you just pay money, you can change public's opinion. Man, it's so easy. I wish I knew that. That's how the real world works, right? Capitalist countries can get the people to believe whatever they want, and there will be no resistance, no matter how oppressive it is. I'm sure that's working very nicely. And of course, seriously, you can affect opinion a lot. But if you buy out those companies, then that's public knowledge. They're going to know that. Making a new newspaper, especially in the days of online, that's very, very easy to do and very cheap. How is it going to stop the information getting out? It's impossible, not using free market principles. You have to be a government in order to restrict the flow of information.
Ranks with writers secretly paid by him. Despite his efforts though, word spreads around town that Billy Bob has gone too far and needs to be stopped. Still, only a small minority of the population takes part in this, the rest being more than satisfied with their growing living standards under Billy Bob. Anti-Billy Bob movements are formed, but are consequently squashed by Blackwater agents working with Billy Bob's growing network of influence.
Okay, this is where it jumps the sharks. So now there's introduction of violence. That changes everything.
The rest being more than satisfied with their growing living standards under Billy Bob. Anti-Billy Bob movements are formed, but are consequently squashed by Blackwater
Anti-Billy Bob movements, I guess protests?
agents working with Billy Bob's growing network of movements are formed, but are consequently squashed by Blackwater agents working with Billy Bob's growing network of informants.
Okay, so again, what is actually happening here? So I'm assuming they are renters. The only way he can kick them off the property, but there's no way he can actually, shoot them down. That goes against the whole idea of property rights. If this is the equivalent of, let's say, like the CEO of Amazon, let's say Jeff Bezos, suddenly go around saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to start shooting down people who don't buy Amazon from me. Dude, he's going to get slaughtered in the streets. Like, their own officers, everybody else will rebel against him. This kind of power grab, the reputation he built up was based upon being a good businessman, good and fair businessman, giving people what they want. If he starts oppressing people, all the goodwill will go down the drain. He will no longer be able to sustain the model that brought him so far. It would effectively become a politician. He would become a state. And if this is truly an anarcho-capitalist system, where people understand the values of going against states and the free ownership of property, this guy would get eviscerated. Basically, every single city in the entire I'll call it state, the entire country, would ban against him and basically nuke his headquarters into nothing.
Members are tried in the Blackwater court system, popularly accepted as the biggest and most efficient body to dispense justice.
Again, so he's also has a monopoly on the court system. How the fuck did he do that? Like, this is something very hard to do. He takes it for granted that one guy can get a monopoly over everything. At this point, it's not really a criticism of free markets, because in order for this to work, you have to assume that this guy already became a state entirely of his own will. And of course, that is the main argument people use. Like, well, if you have an anarchic system, that people will eventually make up states by becoming so rich. But that doesn't happen. That is hypothetical. That doesn't match real-world observations, which we see today. Like, again, Amazon doesn't even branch. What does it own? Let's say it has a cloud service and it has a shopping network, and I guess it has streaming, and that's it. That's like Amazon taking over everything, taking over food production, taking over water, taking over the police services. It's not gonna fucking happen. This is not match real world observations. It's not a thing.
This in Nineville. Over time, people inside the walls become a sort of higher class citizenry who have access to high quality public services in exchange for their taxes and loyalty to Billy Bob. Those outside the walls don't pay taxes, but no public services are provided to them unless they pay a hefty quote unquote outskirts premium and can only be inside the town center between 8
This doesn't even matter anymore because at this point he made it obvious this guy can use force against others with no downsides. So again, it's not anarchy anymore. This is a state.
a.m. and 9 p.m. Those who want to move inside the city walls won't be let in by Blackwater security unless they pay a quote-unquote settlement premium, a fee designed to keep up the prestige of living inside the walls. Those on the outside have of course limited access to all the jobs and opportunities on the inside. Therefore, they have to get by mostly on agricultural work, for which they get rations and housing. The new unspoken rule spreads around town. Billy Bob will give you law and order, stability and prosperity, but for that you must pay your
Okay, here's an hypothetical. What if somebody decided to build a second town right outside the first one, and he doesn't have the same rules that Billy Bob did, but could still, buy some of the services, or maybe starts offering his own services? This assumes that Billy Bob is literally the only person with money in existence.
use and not question his authority under any circumstances. Those who do get fined or even exiled, depending on the severity, but for each exile there are 5 newcomers to take their place, wanting to participate in the stable economy and society. Okay, alright, so what do we have here? A well-protected town with a fortified administrative center. Outside there is a lower class mostly working the fields. Inside we have a privileged citizen class, and most aspects of life are controlled by a sort of nobility who are only accountable to the men above them. And of course, most of everything.
Problem here is the way he phrases things, because there's one thing he doesn't bring up, and that is violence. Thing is, a free market society can function pretty much exactly the same as we have now, but the big difference is the monopoly of violence. And this is the one thing he doesn't comprehend, he doesn't even bring up. But let's get to the end here, let's see if he does bring up something similar.
The thing is owned by that man alone. So, through this simulation, by starting out with the most ideal circumstances possible for an end-cap society to rise, we ended up with a sort of enlightened feudalism. And why wouldn't we? Capitalism is...
No, it's not feudalism. First of all, do the people have the right to leave the city? Can they move right outside of it and just set up a farm right there and still, do business with them? Who has the monopoly of force? Can people own property? Can they treat this as a business transaction? Because the thing is, feudalism, it was really, really bad. There's a reason why it's such a negative stigma today. Because you did not own the land, you did not own the body. You were not allowed to freely move wherever you wanted. You did not own the fruits of your labor, even using communist thing. So it's a very, very big difference. This is not feudalism. Unless, literally people do not own or have the rights to anything anymore, and it just rules like a tyrant and becomes a state. This is not equivocal at all. I guess it's an idea of people on the left, is that our modern society is feudalism. And if you think, modern society and wealth inequality, that if you think that is feudalism, then I guess maybe you're right. But it's such a misappropriation of the term.
Fundamentally based on a government-like hierarchy, one that isn't democratic. So once you introduce a power vacuum by ending the government, it makes sense that capitalism will fill that vacuum, but this time with a truly autocratic structure. I always hear these libertarians...
A truly autocratic structure. Again, it's so interesting. This is the perspective of how authoritarians see the world. Is that, if there is a power vacuum, that means one person will have a monopoly and take over everything. Because, multiple companies serving different aspects of the market, that's just simply not a thing. Billy Bob, he doesn't even have a structure. He is a sole proprietorship. His company is one-man owned. And what happens when Billy Bob dies, I wonder? Does he have a succession plan? Does he have a board of directors? Are people owned up to him? Does he have any kind of accountability at all? Probably not, because in this example, for it to function, there have to be 2 people in existence. Billy Bob and one person who represents everybody else. There is no competition.
And ANCAPs whine about government tyranny and how taxes are theft. But I mean, when was the last time you had a say in how your workplace is run? Hey, when's the next CEO election coming up? The one you...
I guess this is for the whole workers co-op thing. But the thing is, no, you should not have a say on how your workplace is run. You should have a say in how, if you own a share of a business, then you have a say of how it's run. Because a business owner or an investor is not the same as a worker. There's this idea that a worker should have control over management is nonsense, because especially if you work in a real life company, you realize the average worker is an idiot. This guy should be nowhere close to the control of finances of business or anywhere else. If they had control, if they had the say in what path the business should take, it'll be running to the ground. And that is evident in real life co-ops. Co-ops do not do that well. Corporations function much better for that reason, because the average person, the average worker, does not have the capabilities to run a business.
You can vote in as well as an employee, not just the rich shareholders. Okay, so this was a lot of fun actually, and I think I'll be giving it a second try. Because something must have been wrong, right? Anarcho-capitalism can't just turn into...
Something must have been wrong, right? I love the kind of smug sarcasm that the BreadTuber has have. It's so high and mighty. Obviously, the guy's so smart. He knows everything about it because of this simple thought experiment. Is this a video game, or did you actually make this in CGI? Probably SimCity or something, because otherwise it's kind of impressive.
To feudalism, right? Well, don't you worry. Next time we'll fine-tune the simulation a bit and experiment with some other possibilities, which are no less interesting. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. And also check out my Patreon, link in the description. And I'll be seeing you next time.
And there you go, that was the video. I think it's a very nice insight into how BreadTubers think anarcho-capitalism would work. And I guess this is a very common one too, because especially it's a problem of lack of imagination. People today, we grew up in a state of society, one where there are people who have a monopoly of force and can impose their will upon us without having any say. We've gotten used to it, and we think that's the only way the society can function. There are no other alternative. And in this example, there are some caveats. Because if you believe that there are only two entities, that is one person with all the money and another person who has none of it, then yes, that would become a state, because there will be no competition. Because free markets are about the exchange of ideas, the exchange of goods, the exchange of values, about having markets. And if there are no markets, then it will not be able to function. And that is the one caveat you have to it. Okay, so that's that video. I still haven't seen his other ones. I wonder if somebody else wants to join and talk about it. That's right now, but that's all I had to plan for today. I just want to try different formats, doing different kind of things, because I want to be able to, make some solo content instead of relying on others. Random BreadTuber leftists refutes the strawman opposition instead of the real opposition. Well, the thing is, he tried, because unlike most BreadTubers, he conducted a thought experiment. And that is more than we expect from these kind of people, because usually they don't even do that. So I have to give him props for that one thing. That already puts him a step above most BreadTubers. So I'll give him props for that one, but that's about it. He falls into the same trap holes that the other leftists think of, and that is they do not have enough imagination. When it comes to really understanding how markets and capitalism works, you have to have what's the term for it? You need to have a very good keen eye. You have to really look into the intricacies of how the modern day works and thinks about why it works the way it does. You need to be very perceptive and need a good amount of pattern recognition. This guy, I don't think, will ever realize that, because he's too invested, because he has his identity as a BreadTuber, even though supposedly he used to be a member of the alt-right. You know what? Maybe we'll just watch this video right now, and then we'll finish up the stream. I think that'll be good. Because I'm also curious, how did this guy? Apparently he was an alt-righter. So let's hear his background story. So let's hear it here. Yeah, and let's hear, Adam Something's background story of how he escaped the alt-right.
In the second half of the 2000s, I was an edgy teenager, and as such, I had declared myself an atheist. I went online in search of atheist content, and surely enough I found it. It was the Atheist Experience on YouTube, a show where Christians can call in and have debates with real atheists.
Dude, have you ever watched the Seth Rogen Experience? That's the kind of vibe I'm getting out of it.
It was fun to listen to, and I felt more validated and smarter after each episode, so naturally I wanted more. And so I came across this guy right here, TJ Kirk, the Amazing Atheist.
Dude, the Amazing Atheist, now that brings me back. I used to watch him back in the day, before the whole Bananagate thing happened. Very unfortunate. Don't Google it, by the way.
The OG YouTube skeptic, at least for me. And the main gist of his content, early on at least, was opposing American fundamentalist Christians, who actually used to be a presence on YouTube back then, believe it or not. And by that I mean people producing content which was solely focused on Christianity. Not long after, I came across Thunderfoot with his series about...
Yeah, dude, remember the time when Christian conservatives used to be a real political force? Man, that's been so far away ago. Way back when, they used to be the ones censoring video games. Can you imagine that? Christian conservatives actually pushing for censorship, and the right wing doing censorship? Dude, it seems so far off now.
About creationism, and Pat Condell, one of the best atheist orators on YouTube at the time, and then Armored Skeptic at some point, along with a few others I cannot really recall anymore. At that time, anti-religious content was the bread and butter of the YouTube skeptosphere. Up until around the early 2010s, I should say, where all of their contents pretty much at the same time started shifting towards a certain direction. Skepticism against Christianity started fading into the background. And I mean, no wonder, the well wasn't that deep. There was a finite amount of arguments in favor of Christianity, and it wasn't the brightest people making them, so long story short, the YouTube skeptosphere had to look for new content. And guess what? They fucking found it. The new targets became feminism and progressivism, and sometimes Islam. Every single YouTube...
AKA the Sargon era. Although, again, Sargon is actually doing quite well right now, so he's a survivor of that era, unlike the Amazing Atheist and the other people he talked about. But yeah, the Sargon era, I used to like Sargon back in his golden age too. Even though right now, I think he's still quite good.
Skeptic I was following started making video after video after video about feminism, progressivism...
Oh, man, you're right. What, he's such a hardcore Nazi. I mean, he followed the Amazing Atheist? Holy shit, you know, the fucking guy, I can't believe it. The Amazing Atheist, the most extreme radical that the world has ever known.
Weird posts on Tumblr that became the sole focus of their content. And, as an edgy teenager, I fucking loved it. It was a lot of fun to watch them go against these...
Dude, edgy? You know, Sargon is edgy? Well, I'm not sure what kind of standard this guy have, but okay, that's quite something, you know? I can't believe he can walk up to a person and, did you hear about Sargon of Akkad? You know, he's a real edgy dude. Like, seriously?
Purple hair, screeching, man-hating, fun-ruining feminist types. And then came this little-known event called Gamergate, which saw these content...
Gamergate! Oh, it always comes back to Gamergate, doesn't it? It's so interesting. Like, it ties into everything.
Creators just catapulted into space in terms of views. Entire reactionary channels grew out of this just by doing anti-feminist pro-Gamergate content, including our friend Sargon of Akkad.
And there we go, Sargon. I knew it. I saw it coming. He didn't name it yet, but of course it's going to be Sargon. Oh man, that's his old avatar. He hasn't used this one in a while.
Found during that time and so became a fan of his. However, the content these people produced soon started to shift. We went from, haha, these dumb feminists, to our entire existence is now under threat by these feminists. We have swung too far to the left and now we have to immediately course correct back towards the center. They want to end sexual dimorphism. They want to end masculine men and feminine women. They want...
Yeah, it's the whole Overton window discussion. That used to be a really big thing, especially for Sargon. But it is true to some extent, because yeah, society is changing.
To turn us all into these pudgy, non-gender specific blobs who will live out their miserable, depressed life because they are forced to act contrary to their own nature in this ultra-PC hell that we're constructing, that is flowing out of these SJW-infested universities, which are now basically these progressive indoctrination centers. If you let them win, you will not see any more hot women or masculine men. They say it's sexist. We know it's normal. What do? The left has simply flung too far. I mean, hey, we're classical liberals, we believe in the meritocracy, we believe in colorblindness. I guess our only choice now is conservatism. If you are a classical liberal, a centrist, you have to...
Just so you know, recently, Sargon of Akkad has come out as a conservative, you know, so he did change. So this is actually true in that regard. Because after a while, you really can't call yourself a moderate or even a slight leftist. It doesn't make sense. Even though conservatism, it's not a real ideology, it's fake, but that's a different matter.
Vote for conservatives to try and drag the liberal left back towards the center from this insanity. This is where I was, along with millions of others. Without me...
This is where he was. He was a radical centrist. Like fucking Sargon. Okay. No, maybe he gets into the alt-right later on because so far he's saying that he was a radical centrist and radical centrism is the alt-right. Shit, dude. Oh man, okay, oh no. Okay, let's see if he actually says how he became alt-right. Okay.
Noticing this anti-feminist, anti-SJW classical liberal content had managed to implant this debilitating fear inside me. I honestly felt attacked, really, under siege. Skeptics told me that feminists think that my masculinity is toxic. What? That's not true. I'm just a normal guy. I'm not toxic. My god, these feminists are insane. What's this? They're now harassing some kind of old Canadian college professor or something? Jesus, that's terrible. As time went on, I sank deeper and deeper into essentially doomerism. And consequently, I was listening to more and more Sargon of Akkad.
Jesus, fucking Sargon, that leader of the alt-right. God damn it. Sargon. Oh my god, Sargon. Oh shit, it's like a parody. Oh my god.
Something was bugging me about him. Something was wrong. The things he said, the arguments he made, just started ringing increasingly hollow. He sounded more and more like those Christians back in the day, making the exact same arguments over and over again, just perhaps dressed up a bit differently.
Wait a second, is he implying that Christians are alt-right? You know, because that changes everything. If Christian conservatives are alt-right, I'm not sure my entire foundational beliefs and the view of the world will collapse in on itself.
time. I mean, it felt like Groundhog Day. At that point, I still wasn't a leftist, and if you ask me, I would have told you I am a classical liberal. But that bugging feeling was there, the exact same feeling I had back in the day when I first started doubting Christianity. So I took a deep breath, went back on YouTube, and searched for something like Sargon of Akkad Debunked or something. I was interested to see if anyone could stand up against Sargon's ideas. And the thing about Sargon and people like him back in the day is that they absolutely dominated YouTube. At least in terms of this whole anti-SJW content and culture war.
I'm still not seeing an alt-right anywhere near here. He's just talking about Sargon. I think he's actually gonna say that Sargon is alt-right. Oh no.
Smaller left-leaning content creators who opposed these people were absolutely dogpiled. If you made a video against one of them, you could expect tens of thousands of dislikes, thousands of comments, people calling you all sorts of names, sending you death threats. It was fucking terrible. So the environment itself wasn't really in favor of any sort of leftist content. However, despite of this, I did manage to find two excellent content creators through that YouTube search. H-Bomber Guy and Sean. They both had videos debunking Sargon of Akkad, and they were—
Man, H-Bomber Guy, truly the pinnacle of intellectualism. I watched lots of his videos. Man, I really hate H-Bomber Guy as a person. He doesn't really believe, I think the definition of a grifter actually does fit him. I really seriously doubt he believes anything he says. He is a contrarian. He says things just to stand out, just to go against the grain. That's the reason why he defended Dark Souls 2. Dude, if somebody defends Dark Souls 2, you start thinking maybe he's not arguing in good faith.
Excellent. The two videos I saw, Anti-Feminism vs. Facts and Sargon of Akkad Can't Read, suddenly gave voice to all my misgivings about Sargon. And with that, his entire channel and content just unraveled. And for the first time, I saw him for what he really is.
Damn Sargon, that alt-righter. Holy shit, extremists like him are the ones ruining society. This fascist neo-Nazi Sargon of fucking Akkad. I fucking hate him so much, dude.
A confused and underinformed British middle-aged man just barking into a microphone about the exact same things for half a decade. Through Sean and H-Bomber Guy, a whole new world of content opened up for me on YouTube, leftist content mostly. And I found that these feminists I've been hearing so much about from these shouty men on YouTube were actually not evil. They didn't want to end sexual dimorphism. They didn't want to turn us into these pudgy, sad, non-gender specific blobs. I've learned about toxic masculinity. Namely, that it doesn't mean that masculinity itself is toxic, but rather that our current understanding of it has some elements that are harmful to men. And that feminists' position on toxic masculinity is actually a pro-male position. Feminists, a previously evil and insidious group of people, have become humanized in my eyes. I no longer hated them just because some people online told me that they are the enemy. And with that, I was out of the matrix. My fear—
He escaped the alt-right. The alt-right that is Sargon of Akkad. I still cannot believe he actually says that. And the thing is, people like this video. Look at the positive ratio. People agree with them. These people believe that Sargon is alt-right. That's amazing.
Evaporated, and I actually became more well-balanced and confident. Looking back at all the content I used to watch, all the alt-right type content, it all looks silly.
Alt-right type content. This is very interesting because I'm learning lots of very, very, very unique things here. Because first of all, the terms he used, because Sargon calls himself classical liberal, aka libertarian in American terms. Libertarians are not alt-right. That is a mainstream ideology. There is a libertarian party in the USA. Second of all, he thinks, wait a second, eventually he became a Christian conservative. Christian conservatism is also not all-right. That is mainstream right. So I don't think Adam Something knows what the word alt-right means. It means not traditional right. Because libertarians, first of all, are not right-wing. You know, it's a centrist ideology. It can be both left-leaning and right-leaning. Of course, I'm a right-leaning libertarian because I believe in capitalism. So that's the main difference. But this is bizarre because so the alt-right has to be, literally the word means is that you are on the right wing, but you are an alternative. You are not mainstream. How could, unless he takes it like that because he's a YouTuber, because Sargon is a YouTuber, that means he's an alternative right-wing podcaster, even though he's not really that right-wing. It's such a stretch of the terms, it's incredible. Like, if Sargon is goddamn alt-right, holy crap.
Retrospect, but I now also understand much better how someone can just be stuck in it. The number one factor that keeps people there being fear, which coincidentally happens to be one of the main driving forces behind modern conservatism. No wonder they found each other. As the years went by, some of these shouty men actually broke away from the alt-right, moving towards the center-left. But others, including Sargon of Akkad, have slipped deeper into it. Sargon himself became a white nationalist. And
Holy
now
shit,
serves
Sargon
as
is a
one
white nationalist? Well, that's news to me, dude. Did you guys know that? Can you find me a clip saying that that Sargon wants to save the white race and the future of white children? Because that's news to me, dude. That's gonna be amazing if you can bring this out to light. Like, man, this guy, dude. If you have an interview with Sargon saying that, Adam something, please show it. I would be very curious to see that.
of the many entry points for disaffected youth towards the far right. But thankfully, I think I've managed to avoid that vortex, and now I'd like to help other people do the same. I hope that, as I put out more and more leftist content, people from these alt-right circles will be able to find me, and hopefully I'll be able to change their minds. Just like how my mind was changed back in the day in light of new evidence. Or maybe I'll just get dogpiled or something, who knows. Anyway, for the time being, this far-right resurgence, both on YouTube and in real life, seems to have slowed
Far-right research. Oh, it slowed down. Yeah,
so that's
yeah, he's
good.
correct about that.
But still, the most important
Because the days of how should I even forgot the name? The guy who went to Charlottesville, the one with the tiki torch, dude. He was so. Oh fuck! What was the guy's name? I actually forgot him. I can't believe it. He used to be a very big guy. Like he coined the term alt-right. I can't remember his name anymore. Holy shit.
work we have right now, I feel like, is to prevent people from going down the far-right vortex. And that's what I'm going to do. Aside from making videos dunking on Elon Musk's stupid fucking ideas, first off because I really enjoy doing them, and second, because those things pull some serious audiences, like holy shit. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little blurb from me, and if you like my content, then please consider liking and subscribing. And I'll see.
Well, I think from here we learned lots of very interesting new details, because apparently Sargon of Akkad is the leader of the alt-right and a hard-wing neo-nationalist, white nationalist neo-Nazi. That's wow, holy shit, dude. Spencer, yes, fucking Spencer, Richard Spencer. Jesus, I forgot about that guy. That shows how relevant he is. But yeah, there was a time where Richard Spencer used to be actually relevant. He had a YouTube channel and everything else. And he actually organized things. And I completely forgot about that guy. So no, apparently, you see, Richard Spencer, he's not the leader of the alt-right. Sargon of Akkad was. Sargon of Akkad. Jesus Christ. This is so funny. Okay, so to translate to what Adam Something tried to say is that he used to be a YouTube skeptic supporter, but then he became a breadtuber. So he switched from skepticism, or from atheist contact to skeptics to breadtube. I wouldn't say he ever escaped the alt-right, because he never got into it in the first place. I think if he ever did talk to real alt-righters, he'd probably, hide away in the bathroom, because that'd be pretty scary. Oh yeah, so we learned a lot about this. I don't know, I think this was kind of fun to explore these kind of ideas. So this is probably the kind of sold content I can make. Because the thing is, I can't always get other people to come on the streams. I need to be able to make things by myself, so I can make content more often. So it's probably going to be either stuff like this, like watching videos, maybe watching TV shows, or playing video games. But the thing is, with video games, I have to be passionate about it. Like, I can continue the Pokemon playthrough, but eventually I'll run out of things to say that it's not going to be as interesting. But those are my plans for content right now. And also, if you guys want me to stream during different times, like my days off are during the weekdays. Right now, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so I can stream anytime during those days. I'm not sure if most of you guys are the East Coast or West Coast, so I try to pick a time right now that kind of fits both. But I can do it earlier or later. It doesn't matter. Again, on my off days, I can do it whenever. Okay, let's see. Spencer has always been a DNC plant. Yeah, well, he is a grifter. And by grifter, I mean somebody who doesn't believe what he says. Because he cares about influence and power just like most authorities. And second of all, he's a weird guy. There's something fishy about him. He's a fishy dude. That's all I say. Only the most hardcore alt-righters know that Sargon was the true leader all along. Is he Spinosaurus? I do not know who Spinosaurus is. Let me look that up. Spinosaurus. I'm actually finding the actual Spinosaurus. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm guessing there's a YouTuber or somebody like that. But yeah, as usual, I'll try doing a call-in segment. If somebody wants to join, again, it's completely optional. Just do whatever you want. Oh man, Adam sounds very interesting. It's probably the best new breadtuber, because unlike, let's say, H-Bomber, who releases a new video once a year and it's like 2 hours long and it's really bad, this guy actually makes regular content, like more than a week. Let's see, because the last video, like Anarcho-Capitalism in Practice, he released that 2 days ago. Before that, it was 6 days, then a week, then the same week. He does it like 2-3 times a week, which is amazing. That's an amazing output of content, and all of it is really popular. So he's doing quite well for himself. Yeah, this guy is going to be a big deal. And this kind of exposure, I just think it's very good to think about and try to debunk it, because this is what convinces people. Like, he has very good ratios. People do believe in what he says. Spinosaurus is David Schrift. I haven't heard of him. Let's see who that is. Okay, let's see. David Sharat. Okay, who is this? Okay. I still can't find this guy. I do not know who it is. Like, I think in my search engine... Okay, let's try less censored search engine. Let's try Yandex. Let's see if that brings him up. Okay, Encyclopedia Dramatica has him. Okay, he's a MGTOW turned SJW. Okay, so there you go. Yandex is the solution. It actually brings it up. By the way, if you hate Google and saying, "Oh, Google is a monopoly, it sucks, I don't want to use it anymore," if only there was an alternative, alternative does exist. Here, I'll show you guys. So, screen share right here. This is Yandex. This is a search engine done by the Russian government. I'm not sure if it's the Russian government, but it is a Russian website. And things, dude, Russia, that's so authoritarian. But the thing is that other authoritarian countries outside the United States and the West, they don't really give a shit about the same things that they do. So Russia doesn't care if you hate certain Americans, what you think about feminism, what you care about alt-right grifters and all that stuff. They only care if you criticize Vladimir Putin. So as long as you don't care about finding unbiased information about Russia and its politicians, Yandex is by far the most free market and open search engine you can use right now. I tried all the other ones. I tried, actually, I'll tell you right now a secret. The primary search engine I'm using right now is Bing, because I found it to be better than Google, because I seriously could not stand using Google anymore. But I'm gonna have to stop using it, because right now it's been flooded with ads. Like the top 3 or 4 results for every search I make are sponsored ones, which means it's unusable for finding things I'm actually searching for. So I'm gonna have to quit. The problem with Yandex, the only downside, is that it's not, you're not expected to use it as your primary search engine. Like, it has an anti-flood protection. If you use it too much, it makes you fill up a CAPTCHA. Maybe it gets better if you make an account. That's the only downside. I'll try experiment with that, because honestly right now I'm contemplating just switching to Yandex full time. I also tried switching to DuckDuckGo, but it was bought out. I think it was bought out by Yahoo, but it was bought out by a different company. So it censors results just as bad as Google and Bing. So it's not that good. So for now, yeah, I would recommend Yandex. It's the best I've seen. So apparently Spinosaurus was Kraut's capo. Okay, I did not follow Kraut that much, so that explains why I didn't know that. But he turned an SJW. That makes sense, especially with these radical centrists. They're not that far off. Really, when you believe in what they believe in, there's only 2 ways you can go. You can go a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. Because conservatism and liberalism really are fundamentally the same thing. Conservatism as a hardcore ideology with principles does not exist. It's fake. I might make a video just about that, because I hate conservatives. Conservatism is the ideology of the eternal losers. Like, if you're a conservative, that means you don't want to win. You will give up, but do so with grace. You must lose gracefully. That is what it means to be a conservative, and that's just incredibly scummy. Good liars get the numbers. Former crowd friend, too dumb for BreadTube, got cocked by Lauren Simozen, and that girl who fucked after alt-right. Who was she? Are you talking about Lauren Southern or somebody else? I have not been keeping up with these alt-right grifters, so I do not know what's currently the hot take or who's really popular, because most of them have been kicked off YouTube. I know Odyssey is really popular right now for that kind of stuff. There's a few that escaped. I think like Blackpilled. I watched some of his videos, but I don't know, he's a bit too depressing and repetitive, so I don't watch him anymore. I haven't really been keeping up with them. I only did this because it kind of relates to my thing, which is right now Anarcho-Capitalism. I think I'll focus a bit more on it. But yeah, okay. I think now is a good time to finish this stream. I enjoyed it. As long as you have fun doing whatever you want, I think that is the good takeaway from it. And unlike doing book reviews, which I fucking hate it, dude, it just does not work, I think this kind of content is a lot more enjoyable. So I might do more of it in the future. Or I might do video games or whatever. You guys are always welcome to comment, or you can message me either YouTube comments. I read everything. You can message me on Twitter. It's not going to be as often. Or you could just, message me on Discord. I also always have it on, so I always respond to things. So I'm really easy to get in contact with. So you guys can do whatever you want. Other girl, not Lauren Southern. Can't remember her name, but her nudes were posted everywhere. I think I remember there was somebody like that back in the day, but it's so far back, dude. I mean, the alt-writers are really not relevant anymore, so... And we probably should not remember it either. It was amazing drama. Oh, that's true. But back in the old, blood sports days, that was something. But yeah, okay. So I guess I'll finish it off here. Thank you guys all for watching, and have a good night.